Welcome to Make Sense, Make Waves, a conversational podcast where my guests and I explore the often overlooked, sometimes messy, and inevitably human side of leadership and organizations. From luck and ambiguity to the personal experiences that shape styles and decisions, we'll dig into the real unscripted forces that make or break results and the important things that often don't appear in the manual. If you enjoy what you hear, I encourage you to subscribe and follow so that you can see or listen to other episodes that we record. And if you've got a story of your own, something that you think will fit with what we've been chatting about, please do get in touch. I'd be excited to speak with you. Hello, and welcome to today's conversation with Andy Noble. Andy is someone that I've known for quite some time, and we may well get into some of that in the conversation too. But allow me to just briefly introduce him in the kind of formal way before we get to know Andy a little bit more, perhaps a bit more personally. So Andy is a human-centered, empathy-driven leader with over 25 years experience in IT services, 15 of which in leadership roles across service management, service integration, support and managed services. Andy currently serves as a global leader of support services at Software One, and prior to that, he held multiple director-level roles, building a reputation for transforming teams, elevating team culture, and delivering high-performance outcomes at scale. He's also earned awards for outstanding leadership and performance. But Andy's story isn't just about support teams and service frameworks in an office environment. Outside of work, he's an avid hill walker and outdoorsman within the UK's national parks. He's a mountain leader, bushcraft instructor, scout leader, and Duke of Edinburgh expedition assessor, roles that bring him into the wild, unpredictable environments where sense-making, trust, resilience, and calm decision-making are essential. Andy often says the outdoors is where he finds balance and perspectives from the pressures of the day job, but also the skills and quality he develops in the outdoors, from reading subtle cues in the weather to leading teams through uncertainty, deeply shape how he leads when he returns to the office. So a very warm welcome to Make Sense, Make Waves, Andy. I'm delighted to have you here.
Thanks, Stephen. Delightful to be here, and thank you. Such a lovely introduction. Very, very flattering.
Not at all. It did make me want to question what you do in the afternoons.
Well, that's where I get the coffee and the cake out. Yeah.
Indeed. So let's step away from the sort of formal bit and just get to know you a little bit first, perhaps to start with. So, let's start with a sort of straightforward thought. Really, how did you get into organisational business leadership in the first place? Let's understand a little bit about that journey for you, please.
Sure. And without sounding like a walking metaphor, I guess I stumbled into it. I never really considered or sought out management responsibilities, but early in my career, I guess I found myself becoming the person that people started to come to when things weren't working, whether that was a process or a customer escalation or some team dynamic issue. I never really had the authority, but people seemed to trust my calmness or my ability to make sense of messy situations, and I guess my determination to sort them out as well. I was never one to accept the status quo. If something could be better, easier, or as a support engineer early in my career, anything that was less likely to result in me getting a phone call at 2 a.m. in the morning, I was keen to get sorted. And I guess those moments created opportunities, first in team leadership, and I was thrust into that by my boss at the time, who just called me downstairs to a meeting room one morning and said, "Hey, I'm making you a team leader, thanks. And by the way, I'm leaving the business, so over to you." So that was quite nice. into the thrust into it, really without any support, really, and I really dug into leadership principles from there. And then I guess that progressed into more broader operational management roles, and eventually the senior roles that I hold today. But it's never been about chasing hierarchy or position. It's always been about wanting to improve how we do things for myself, my teams, my colleagues, and for our customers ultimately. Super.
Thank you. I think that story of waking up one day and becoming a team leader is it's not it's familiar. I think that's what happened to me. I got a conversation one day where someone said, "I think you'd be quite good at this. We've got a space. Off you go."
Sounds similar. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's an origin story of many of the people that I know in leadership. That
Mm.
maybe there are some who, they were sort of they were doing annual reports in the womb, maybe, and were interested in being that person. But um, I'm not so sure. Thank you. So what about the mountain leadership part? What got you to that? It might briefly be worth explaining what mountain leadership actually is as part of that, because perhaps people aren't quite so familiar.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with that first. So mountain leadership is formally taking groups of people. In my case, that's young people through Scouting or Duke of Edinburgh, but also adult groups into the mountains under formal guided leadership. So where they don't know where they're going, what they're doing, and we're asking for somebody to take charge of their journey through the hills. So that's really what the mountain leadership side of things is. And I stumbled into that too, probably a little bit more literally as well. But my love of the outdoors goes back to my childhood, really, and I was very lucky to spend a lot of my younger years in the farmland and countryside around my hometown. I was a scout myself growing up and loved the camps that we used to go on as kids. But really, I drifted away from that during secondary school and going through GCSEs and finding girls and drinks and stuff like that. So things started to become more focused around becoming a young adult.
Sure.
But I remember seeing Ray Mears on TV when I was about 18 or 19, and he's a bushcraft extraordinaire, really, and one of my stars in my life, I guess. And that rekindled things for me. I started doing some bushcraft, which exploded into a massive passion for me. I did several courses and expeditions across the UK and Europe. And at about 25, after having started informally showing other people what bushcraft is and some of the skills, I was encouraged and asked to help set up a bushcraft school, which I ended up then running solely, which wasn't the intention to start with. It was supposed to be a partnership, but I ended up, my partner stepped away from it, and I ended up running it independently. So I did that alongside my IT job for about 10 years. And at that time, the mountains wasn't something I really knew anything about, but a colleague around about 2008, an IT colleague, he was into mountains, and he suggested we did a charity walk up Snowdon in North Wales. And looking back, I was woefully underprepared for that. I didn't know what I was doing. It was the first time I'd been out in the mountains, really. But I loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved we did it in winter as well. And I loved the trekking up through snowy peaks and the exposure on some of the ridges, and the views were expansive. You got to the top, and it was a super lucky day. We had these clear skies, which is unusual for Snowdon. But we could see for miles across into Anglesey. I think we could see Ireland. It was amazing. And for me, it was just, I fell in love with the hills that day. We did it a few more times. It almost became like an annual event. Pretty much every time was on Snowdon. So we kind of got to know Snowdon really well. But yeah, we were quite isolated to Snowdon, and I still didn't really appreciate at that time that there's hundreds of other mountains in the UK.
Yeah.
But then about 8 years ago, at work again, we did the National Three Peaks Challenge, which is you do Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike, and Snowdon within 24 hours. And we had a guide running that event, because there was like 30 of us in the office that were taking part. And so they put some professional guides in place. And it was this wonderful chap called Nick Hollis, who I'm still really good friends with now, who I think he saw how much I was enjoying being in the mountains, but also saw some of that potential coming through from my bushcraft, running bushcraft courses and teaching others. And I guess some of that leadership kind of snuck through, and he encouraged me. I don't even know why he encouraged me to say, but he said, "Why don't you do your mountain leader qualification?" I was like, "Well, I don't really understand what that is." And I had no idea what I was getting into at the time, but it sounded fun, and he was encouraging. And by the end of it, got home, I'd signed up to do this mountain leader qualification. And I guess once I committed to it, I was in that, I can't let him down. I was going to complete it. So I started going out into the hills loads, and they became like a refuge for me, I guess, somewhere I found peace, clarity, and mental reset, some of the pressures of the day. And I felt I wanted to share that with others. It became almost like a mental health escape for me as well. It was really somewhere where I loved being. But if I was going to share it with others, I wanted to do that safely, make sure I was introducing people into the outdoors in a safe and trusted way. So yeah, I really continued to train formally, a couple of courses, did all my training, and then a couple of years later passed my mountain leader qualifications. So now when I take family, friends, scouts, Duke of Edinburgh students out into those wild places, I love seeing that wonder and awe of how beautiful, wild, thrilling, slightly dangerous even at times that the mountains can be, that I experienced all those years ago. And I love seeing them growing confidence and becoming more comfortable in that environment through what we do. And genuinely, it's one of the most enjoyable and rewarding parts of my life, especially introducing kids to it and getting them keen and hooked on outdoors. Maybe they come from cities or towns where they don't get that opportunity.
Mm. I mean, I've seen some of the photos of some of the places you've been, and perhaps that should be in our future at some point. It's me coming up a mountain with you. I think we should make that happen.
Absolutely, we can make that happen. Yeah.
But that the beauty of it is sort of undeniable, whichever way you look. Just it made me think I might murder this quote because I've scribbled it down, but I'm not sure I've got it right, which was something that Friedrich Nietzsche said of this in relation to your point about release and mental health, I suppose, was he who climbs upon the highest mountains laughs at all tragedies, real and imaginary. and there's something intuitively, for me anyway, there's something intuitive in that of, you know, the petty spreadsheet that I haven't filled in properly in the office pales into insignificance to clinging onto the side of a mountain in a light gale or whatever it might be. But just the sense of awe gives you context, I guess, for that other thing happening as well.
On a good day, the mountains can feel peaceful and wild and amazing, but equally on a bad day in the mountains, if you still go out, it can feel like that. It can feel you're so focused, and you have to be so focused. It is like meditation almost as well when you're battling against the elements.
Yeah.
To complete your walk safely and to get your group off safely as well. You forget everything else. It's like a reset. But yeah, it builds resilience like nothing else. You know, if you can be calm on the top of a mountain in 60-mile-an-hour winds, which weren't expected, and you're pinned down and you can't even move, and you're having to crawl off the hill, like you say, that spreadsheet becomes the pressures of your day-to-day job. For most people, lives aren't on the line in our office roles. On the hills, leading groups, sometimes it generally they can be.
Oh, just while we're there, I know you briefly told me about an experience you had on Glencoe. Was that fairly early in your mountain leadership, or
no? Anyway, it was actually only a couple of years ago. We started. I got much more into winter walking recently. I think it's not something to just jump in at the beginning. Like actually I did, you know, the first mountain I walked was Snowdon in winter, and I said I was woefully unprepared. But probably once the conscious incompetence kicked in, I realized I needed to up my winter skills before we did anything more serious like Scotland. But actually a couple of years ago, myself and a group were in Glencoe, which is in Scotland near Fort William. And we had planned, it'd been awful weather the day before, but there was this lovely weather window, well, reasonable weather window the next day. So we'd offset our day to do a bit of a mountain climb, a bit of a winter climb with actual ice axes, crampons sort of thing, and then up a ridge to summit out. The weather was forecast to be about 20 miles an hour winds at the top. But after spending most of the day in the lee of the wind, we're sheltered from the wind by the mountain itself in the shadow of the mountain. We topped out along this ridge, which we spent quite a bit of time navigating up. And we popped our heads up over the top of the rocks, and it was like being hit by a train. You know, the wind was ferocious, probably more like 60, 65 miles an hour, which you hear people talk about 100-mile-an-hour winds and things like that. But, you know, you cannot stand up in 60-mile-an-hour winds, especially on rocky terrain. And it just blew us over. You know, we were totally pinned down. It was kind of alluded to it a minute ago. And we were unable to return the way we'd gone because it was quite a technical climb up. So we had to get off the side of this hill regardless. And we'd already had a few delays coming up the ridge, the technical climbing, the ice axing, the crampons, and we had a bit of rope. We had to deploy a rope at one point just to get one of them over a bit of a technical bit that they were nervous on. Anyway, so we're a bit behind time. It's probably now 2:00 in the afternoon. It's February, so dark's coming at about 5. And we have to get down off this hill, and we can't move. We're huddled behind the trig point on the top of this mountain, and the only way to move was crawling on your hands and knees, which maybe that's not so bad on carpeted floors, but on rocky floors it's uncomfortable. So it took us about an hour to crawl 600 meters. It was just so, we're crawling downhill over rocks, everyone's in pain. And then eventually we got to a place on the hill where we could almost go over the edge and again, ice axe down this slope. The wind's up, the weather started to turn. It's now raining/sleeting. The snow in that valley was nowhere near the same quality of the snow in the previous valley. It was all soft and we were just sinking through it. We weren't making much progress at all. By now it's about 4:00 and we're still at 1,000 meters above sea level, and it wasn't much longer. It got to 5:00, 5:36. We're now in pitch black, head torches on, trying to get down off this mountain in the snow. So no phone signal to contact home or let anybody know that we were okay, but delayed, massively delayed. But eventually we dragged ourselves off the mountain 6 hours later than expected. We met by the police and mountain rescue on the side of the road, because my wife had actually rung them and said that my husband's missing. So it was a little bit of a for us, we were okay. It was difficult, but we were just going through the obstacles one at a time, but slowly, because it was just keeping that group safe through those obstacles. But for the people in the outside world, where's my husband, where's my wife, the people in the group, they were not in a good place, that's for sure. But it was fine, and it was one of those probably close calls. And in hindsight, there was probably a couple of cues that we missed, around our timings, and maybe there was probably a couple of turn back points that if we'd done the maths, if everything was perfect, maybe we would have got off the hill a couple of hours late. But with any challenges along the way, we probably could have identified earlier that we shouldn't have pushed on with the last climb. But that's hindsight for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess that starts to get into one of the questions that's sort of nagging at the back of my mind around the you're dealing with imperfect information kind of constantly on a mountain, or at least you're dealing with your best understanding of that information. It may be correct, it may not be, and you've got to kind of continue to be on watch. The question that I had, I suppose, more than anything else, and just to say something you said earlier about the mountain leadership, by doing that, your role is to take charge of as in the people with you, their journey on the hills or their journey through the hills and so on.
Yeah.
And in a sense, you were in some form of crisis leadership in that Glencoe thing. You've got a group of people who presumably are looking to Andy to say, I want to get off this mountain, please.
Yes.
Show me which way to go. That has, on the face of it, that's got a very different style and feel to it, to the kind of leadership and leadership that we tend to promote in organizations, where it's all about openness and diverse points of view and collaboration and those sort of things. And I'm being almost intentionally black and white with those descriptions, because I'd just be really fascinated to understand, or just hear from you about your perspective of those two things. Do you see them as related, different? Is it just a different persona that you adopt in each of those cases?
Well, I think those sort of leadership styles can, whether you're being more commanding or more collaborative, I think they can be needed in different situations in both settings, right? Whether you've got some serious escalations coming in, a system outage, or client complaints come through. There can be high stakes, high stress situations in the office where actually, sitting around a table and giving everyone an opinion and getting everybody to collaborate time can be critical. Yeah. Especially in the IT setting, when a system outage can be millions of dollars or pounds a minute or hour of outage. So sometimes you've got to take command, and that's the same in that mountain setting. if on a good day, it would never feel like I am in charge. I might be leading the route because I know where I'm going. I'm navigating through the mountain, but it'd feel much more that like the dynamics, much more of a team of people passing through the hills together.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell everybody where to step, but when we're trying to get down off that slope, I'm literally put your foot there, because if they put it in the wrong place, that's potential 100-meter drop off the side of a mountain. It's a higher stake. So I'm not willing to give any flexibility in certain situations. In others, I might walk through and give a bit of a briefing beforehand and say, make sure you got 3 points of contact when you're climbing, go through some basic instructions with them and then watch and allow them to experiment and learn and get better. But only if it's safe to do so. If you need to take charge, I take charge. And sometimes that's the same in the office. Sometimes you need to take charge and tell somebody exactly what's expected of them. But I think it all depends on the situation you're in and being able to adapt accordingly. Having those chameleon style leadership and be able to bring out the right flavour when it's needed.
So I'm certainly with you on that. That chameleon style thing. I suppose what triggered me to ask that question, I suppose, was you talking about hindsight and missing signals and so on. So in that mountain situation, you are the expert. You've got a group of people that are genuinely relying on you to not drop 10 feet, let alone 100 down the side of a mountain. And there's a kind of a one-to-many relationship in a sense, I guess. In that sort of the IT crisis, I'm trying to get to the question I'm trying to ask you, sorry. In that IT crisis, you also want to benefit from the insights, the hunches and the feelings and the understandings of all of the people around you.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not kind of like the fireman putting you over their shoulder as they run out of the house and you've got no choice in the matter, you're going over there. You still want that person to be telling you about what they're seeing at the same time. And I guess if you've got a more experienced mountain group, you're all looking for the signals for what might be coming your way.
Yeah, and I think there's, just answering the question or adding to it slightly, you can do some planning, right? You can prepare for your day out, before, especially in the winter. There's even a process for it. The week before your trip, the day before your trip, when you're there, etc. You can do some planning. You know what routes you're intending to do. If you're hiking, or it's probably easier to describe, but you'd build a route card with where you expect to be, when, the timings it should take between the legs. You'd start looking at the weather forecast before the day, not just on the day. How much snow has there been? What's the avalanche forecast been a few days beforehand? What's expected? So you can start to make sense of what's probably going to be on the ground. But there's a certain point where you can't just stand in the car park and you keep trying to forecast exactly every possible situation. At some point, you've just got to take that first step and get on with your day. But you've done your risk assessments beforehand. You've kind of built out an idea of what to expect. And then there's this thing called dynamic risk assessing. So you really adjust it at certain key points along your route, or any potential change. You're re-risk assessing, is it still okay? You're looking at any point of what's happening to the weather. Is it actually behaving like the forecast said it was going to be, or have we got a total change in wind direction, or has that cloud come in way earlier than is expected? What's happening with the terrain? Was it, you can look at things on a flat map when you get out there. Is that climb up the ridge more technical than you expected? Was the group managing? Is the work too hard that's been put in front of them? How's the team dynamic? How's their mood? Are there any mumbles, stumbles, fumbles? Is there any sign that things aren't going the way you expected? Where's their energy level at? Are they eating? Are they drinking? You've got to be on top of all of that stuff. Yeah. But like you said, a lot of that information is imperfect information, I think you called it. You've got to guess a little bit based on the experiences that you've built from previous walks. and you just got to take a certain amount of faith. I'd say whether there's going to be decision points needed, and whether those decision points are reversible decision points or irreversible decision points are really about how much time am I putting into that decision. If it's very easily reversible, I wouldn't just say you would necessarily get on with it, but you might be a little bit quicker to just make a quick judgment as to whether to go on or not. If there is a definite irreversible decision point of after we cross this river, there is no way back, sort of thing.
Yeah.
We might spend more time, have a discussion, a bit more planning, etc., to really make sure, is this the right thing to do? But yeah, again, you can end up second guessing yourself and being a bit nervous. Is this decision the right decision to make? I think that's the whole, is it reversible, irreversible? It helps with that as well. With if this goes wrong, can we safely backtrack? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I use that in my office leadership as well. It's not just being on the hills. There's certain things that a decision you might need to make about, transformation or people or structure, or that some of these decisions are one-way doors. Once you say something, you're not going to be able to adjust it later without certain consequences.
Yeah.
So I think it's similar sort of play there as well.
I smiled just because I was talking to someone recently. We were just talking about changes in organizations in general, and the person I was talking to was trying to help a leadership team by telling them not to talk about the change stuff until they know a little bit more than they did. And they were walking that sort of tightrope or he was trying to explain that they were walking a tightrope, that as soon as the cat was out of the bag, so to speak, they'd crossed a river. You've now got, regardless of what you say and how much you try and say, you've got kind of one, makes it sound very grand. It's not quite one shot, perhaps like the river, but you can take an organization, you can take the faith of a group of people, their perspectives on you and how the world works. You can push that over a precipice just by saying, I'll be all right. Our organization is agile now, or our organization is this, that, and the other. You're not in control of the ferrets, as it were, that run off when you lift up the stone. I don't know where ferrets and stones came from as my metaphor there, but
I was enjoying the proper piss and the river and all the other metaphors you're showing.
I know.
Makes me feel like I'm outdoors.
If it was ever going to be me, it was going to be a mixed metaphor. You probably know that by now. So can we just I've been fascinated to just come back and see how you sort of articulate that yourself, because you started to talk about those reversible and irreversible decisions and how it sounds like the experiences that you've had on the mountains have kind of they've affected how you think about things, perhaps in the office. But do you think, I guess, what's the relationship between those two things? Have you thought about how each of those are affecting one another?
I think so. I think there's definitely a link between not just necessarily mountain leadership, but being in an outdoor setting, being in wild places. Even before I was doing mountain leadership, the things that you might what am I trying to say? The likelihood is the more you go outside, the more imperfect days you have, and you come across challenges, whether it's the sole of your boot falls off and you have to deal with it, or you will go to open your lunchbox and you realise you left it on the kitchen counter and you've got no food for the day, or you went to get your waterproof out and realise you've left that in the back seat of the car. There's going to be mistakes that happen and things that happen that you have to deal with. Sure. The more and more you go out, you start coming across bigger situations. I mean, there's 3 times I've had to call mountain rescue out, not for me, but because of people I've come across in the hills, with a broken femur, a broken knee. The other one last winter came across a man who had low blood pressure, cold weather, was just continually fainting, and so you have to deal with situations that are potentially severe. And I guess by having that resilience that you build up of tough situations and being able to deal with them and conquer them, I think that builds a different character. You kind of a bit like the spreadsheet you talked about earlier. You learn to, I can deal with tough situations. I can deal with high stress, high pressure situations. And I think the more in the outside world, you're more likely to have to deal with it. You can't just go, I don't like that idea. I don't like the fact that I'm not getting my way, or things are tough, or my inbox is really busy at the moment, or my boss is being a bit of a bully to me, or you can't throw the towel in and just go, I quit. If you're on the top of a mountain, you go, I've had enough. Well,
send in your application to a new mountain.
Exactly. Yeah, and sadly, I mean, that has actually been, I think that lack of resilience has been seen a large increase in mountain rescue call-outs in the last couple of years, where people have been getting out of the mountain going, I don't like this, and calling mountain rescue. And that has exhausted and drained. So I'm going to go off on a tangent, a bit of a soapbox there. It's drained the resources of our volunteer mountain rescue teams. Llanberis Mountain Rescue, which is the one that looks after Snowdon, they had over 350 call-outs last year. That's a call-out a day, essentially. It's exploded. And these are volunteers who are coming out risking their lives to look after others. And so often it's lack of preparation, lack of the right equipment, lack of the ability to read a map, getting cold and scared. It's not, then probably lower limb injuries of twisted ankles and whatnot. But there's so many call-outs they're dealing with, is people who just don't want to be there anymore and they just need some help. Now, they'll always come out. They always want you to call. I think that preparation and being ready for the outdoors is super important. But the more you go out, the more resilient you get. And then I think that comes back into the office place, linking it back to your original question. I think you do learn and you become more experienced to deal with those higher stress situations. So when you are in the office, you can be a bit calmer about them. You bring a different mentality to them and go, you know what, no one's going to die. Let's just take our time. Let's relax. Let's take a step back. Let's regroup and plan a way forward. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've got from doing more outdoors stuff, whether it was bushcraft or mountains, is learning how to deal with tough, mentally and physically demanding situations that have then built the mental muscles as well as the physical muscles in some places to deal with tough situations in the office as well.
See, that's really, really fascinating. Two thoughts came off of that immediately. One was slightly tongue-in-cheek, the idea of answering the phone at 2:00 in the morning from a very senior customer contact and saying, "That's all right, no one's going to die," and just seeing how that conversation plays out.
Probably not very well.
I'm not in that space anymore to try that, but if you ever do, let me know how it goes.
Yeah, it won't go well.
No. I think it will probably go quite well. Although, incidentally, I got during one major outage at one point, I got a call from someone I've been trying to get hold of back in the dark mists of my time, and I couldn't get hold of the customer. This was crisis. And I got hold of them about an hour and a half later when the film finished, because they'd gone to the cinema. So anyway, some people clearly know that already.
Yeah.
The more serious question, though, because this is something that's been bothering me for a while, and maybe you've got a take on this too, that in the world of speakers and speaker circuits, there's this habit of bringing up the Olympians and the mountain climbers and these often individual, incredible people, with the idea that they can kind of motivate and stand at the front. And I guess the idea is somehow vicariously we pick up some of that from them and we can take that back into our day-to-day. But I don't think that works at all. I think you're more resilient as a leader. That's a statement. Okay, so please disagree with me. I think you're more resilient as a leader because you have had the experience of being on a mountain, and therefore you are that person. But just you telling another person about your experiences won't help them at all. The resilience comes from the doing, not from the. Does that follow?
I think it resonates, and that's why I would absolutely love to take you out on the mountains. And I say that, and often it is groups of colleagues that I do take out on the mountains, and sometimes customers or anybody that picks up and resonates with the idea of coming on the mountains. If they want to come, get in touch. I really do think it's more. I agree that the benefit is from coming to the mountains and experiencing it than hearing about my experiences in the mountains. Absolutely. A good few years ago, I was I went for a promotion in the company I used to work for, and my manager's manager at the time, he said to me, I can't remember the exact word to use. He basically said, you need to earn some more scars. And I think that's kind of the same thing. You need to go through tough situations before you're put in tougher situations, and you need to build up that resilience. Otherwise, it's not good for the company. It's not good for you, right? It's not good for the situation. I wouldn't go and just because I've done some mountains in the UK, go and tackle Everest tomorrow. It's too big a jump. And I think you do need to build that I called it the mental muscle. To be able to know how will I respond in tough situations, build that emotional intelligence. Really, you don't know how you're going to respond until you're put in those situations. So the more challenging situations you can put yourself in a safe, controlled way, ideally, don't just go and you've never walked a mountain before. Let's go and do like a major ridge walk across the Isle of Skye or something. Maybe take a little bit of a progressive journey. But you'll build up your capability, you'll build up your experiences, you'll build up your resilience. I do think people should do more to put themselves out of their comfort zone as much as possible in a safe and controlled way, to build up that mental capability of dealing with stressful situations. I think that's really important for anybody, whether it's our next generation, our youth. I think too often we've cotton wooled and bubble wrapped our children and aren't putting them through tough situations, and it's not healthy. They need to learn young, build that resilience up so they can come into the workplace, they can come into tougher roles and not throw the towel in and go, I don't like this, can I try again in another place? I think it's really important to build that early so that it can help our next generation.
Thank you. Reflecting on another conversation I had earlier today too, we were talking about and I think there's a parallel in here a little bit, maybe this is a cul-de-sac, but the websites and things out there that summarize books, for example, it gives you that false sense that you understand the subject matter. And I've read 99 books this year and all that sort of thing. Well, unless you've actually spent time understanding those things, the knowledge is never really truly part of you. You've got the soundbite, but if anyone asks you a question or something deeper, you can't get to that point either without experiencing it, without understanding it, without talking about it with other people and so on and so on. And then you maybe could say that you've truly understood or you've truly read the book. But certainly reading asking AI to just give you a quick summary of the thing and then expecting to know, we're not going to be there, and nor are we going to have the little AI assistant in our pocket telling us where to put our feet on a mountain either.
Correct.
I can't possibly see. The only thing AI might do is call mountain rescue sooner than you want it to. I suppose that's probably the only thing it might do for now.
Let's hope that I was about to say let's hope that AI and mountains never cross paths, but actually I think certainly in the preparation beforehand, like I talked about avalanche risk and stuff like that. Maybe AI has a role to play in pre-planning. It's got access to a huge array of information and data that most people wouldn't even know where to start. Typing in a prompt like, is it safe to climb Ben Nevis in the middle of winter, into AI might actually be a really good starting point for a novice walker, because it would say, no, it's not safe. And it would give all these reasons as to why. And maybe if more people did more research and used the tools available in this modern era, it would cut down some of those mountain rescue call-outs. It would cut down the number of incidents and accidents on these novices that are in this unconscious incompetence. They don't know what they don't know. Yeah. So please find out about these things before you venture out into the hills. And maybe that is one place where AI could really help. But Instagram is a killer. People posting pictures up of all these wonderful walks and people then wanting to copy and replicate it. And I don't say it's a killer figuratively. I mean, it's literally resulting in people copying and then resulting in their sad, unfortunate demises. And the other thing that is probably phone GPS, people thinking they can just follow a route on all trails and then the batteries die. No, they don't know how to read a map and compass. So technology is wonderful, but it's got to be used carefully.
It made me think of the AI saying, "Yes, climbing that mountain's a good idea, Dave." As it's literally trying to get rid of you. Um, because that's a little bit like that vicarious thing, isn't it? Because I've just listened to the skeleton gold medalist talk. I've got a little slice of me is now a skeleton gold medalist. I'm going to take that into my next thing, and it's that false depth or false sense of it, or it's very shallow. Sorry, just use English language, shall I? But it's that sense of being too hubris probably plays a part there. You're going to get very confident very quickly, and then get knocked off your perch too if you're not
Yeah,
too careful.
yeah. I've making the Olympic, the winter. Yeah, I've watched the final curling match, therefore I can curl, right? And I've watched 14 peaks, therefore I can go and scale an 8,000-meter mountain. Just because you've read a book or watched it, it doesn't make you an expert. But I think it all links back to unconscious incompetence. People don't know what they don't know. They think it's easy. They just look at it as a map and see a flat line. I would say I am consciously incompetent at mountain hiking. I know what I can do, but I also very much know where my limits are.
Yeah.
You called me a mountain expert earlier. I am not an expert in the mountain. I am so far from an expert, but I'm certainly qualified a lot more than most people in the public to take groups up into the mountains. But I'm not an experienced ice climber. I'm not an 8,000-meter summiter. I'm not I'm an IT director, right? That's my profession. Mountain leading is my hobby, and it's what I love. But yeah, it's knowing where your limits are and knowing how far you can take that safely is really important as well.
I wanted to just refer back to that point about using the knowledge and the capability and the understanding of the people in an office or in an office situation. So if you've got a team of 10 people, ideally those 10 people have got some eyes on what's going on around you as well. So
yeah,
unlike like I talked earlier about the mountain leader being all eyes are on you, I would hold that there's significant value in having a team of people that are also sensing what's going on around you, as opposed to expecting the so-called expert, the leader, the boss, whatever, to be doing all the sensing. Perhaps an argument is for something like the increase in mountain rescue calls is the very fact that you feel like you've got a safety net and like a literally or sort of metaphorically a mum or a dad to make the decisions and come and rescue you means you don't take accountability. I'm in well, I guess my question is, does that resonate with you? Because even on a mountain, when you've got a group of people behind you, you don't want them to be ignorant of what's going on around you. Presumably, you want them to notice stuff too.
Yeah, to within their capabilities, absolutely. And the British Mountain Council, the BMC, they make a statement that if you're participating in hill walking, you should be consciously aware that you are in a dangerous environment where bad things can happen, and you need to take responsibility for yourself. Same with all my disclaimer forms. By participating in this event, you are still taking responsibility for your own safety. You need to be aware. Now, that doesn't. There's a case happening at the moment for a gentleman in Austria whose partner sadly died on the mountain with them, and he's been found guilty of manslaughter. And that is a big tipping point as to how much level of responsibility do you have over your group. Professionally, of course, as a guide, if I'm employed to take a group out, I've got responsibilities. But what if it's just a group of friends? Oh, Andy's got more experience than me, therefore he's in charge. No. You've got
pass me another beer.
Yeah, you've still got to take some responsibility for your own actions, pointing that and there's I can't remember the right term for it. Maybe you can jump in, but is it called co-pilot syndrome, or where he's the pilot, he knows what he's doing, therefore I won't point out the fact that there's a fuel warning light on. Andy's the mountaineer. I won't point out that there's a great big great big cornice hanging over our heads. That's probably going to avalanche on us. But Andy knows what he's doing, so surely he thinks it's safe to be here.
He must have noticed.
He must have noticed too, yeah. And I think that there's a big human side to being in the mountains. Trust isn't a nice to have. You've got to. It's difficult when you're taking a group out and they're strangers. But in that scenario, I don't trust anybody that I'm with. I will take full control over the safety of that group. But if it's a group of friends or climbing partners and buddies, we've really got to know each other, and we've created bonds and friendships that will be lifelong through the experiences that we've gone through together. But I think it's important to get a sense, whether it's a new group, or you've got to make some assumptions or get an early sense as to what's the pace the group can handle. Can you spot when someone's struggling? Maybe there's a slight limp that's formed or whatever. But I think also you need to be able to encourage with honesty as well, really sort of tune into the emotional and physical state of the team and lead that accordingly. And that's so critical in the office as well, getting to know that team that you're with and understanding what's the pace that team can work at. How much pressure and stress can that team deal with? I think there's overlaps there, absolutely. I think there's an entanglement with the sort of things you have to do in any team, well, even team sports as well, like a football team or a rugby team, whatever your flavour of sport is. I think working as a team, you have to be able to work as a team, trust one another, but equally there is always still a captain or a leader or somebody who's sort of taking charge of that overall dynamic. I think that's true here. You've got to, as the leader, you've got to understand the capability, protect the pace, manage the energy, and I guess also create the conditions where people feel safe to speak up. Because one of the first things I do with my group when they turn up is, I go through sort of the safety of the day. But the other thing I say, if you need a break, if you're getting too hot, if you're feeling like your ankle or your heel is starting to blister, please speak up early, because we can deal with it when it's like a minor issue before you've walked for 4 hours, got to the top of the mountain and told me I've got a gaping wound on the back of my foot. Can you help me, please? It's a little bit too late, and we're now in crisis mode. And I think it's the same. If teams can't speak up and have that psychological safety that they can call out as an issue, that's when the organisation's not healthy, and it's not going to succeed. And that's the same whether if you're in a high risk environment or an office environment. The team has to be psychological safety there to make sure that the team can communicate with one another openly and transparently.
Very much. I appreciate we're coming to time on this call. So I just wanted to say, first and foremost, a massive thank you, Andy, for coming along and being so open and talking about your experiences.
Pleasure. No, it's been really, really nice experience. Thank you. Yeah.
No, not at all. I'll post a link to your LinkedIn. You don't have to accept any connections, of course, but a few people might reach out, I'm sure, and ask you about getting on a mountain, if nothing else. So
would be a pleasure. Yeah, that'd be really, really good fun. Yeah.
Thank you ever so much, Andy. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Stephen.
Cheers.
Thank you.